Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach for Defend and Publish, and welcome to episode 52, Tough Conversations with Your Dissertation Advisor. I can't even sum up how many conversations I've had with clients in December about this issue, and I decided to devote an emergency episode to talking with your dissertation advisors. And for those of you that are advising graduate students and you're on the other end, you're the dissertation advisor, I am going to make an episode for you because I've got some strategies that I think might be helpful as you're talking with your graduate students. But for this side of the conversation, let's focus on graduate students who need to talk to their dissertation advisors about something. And so for some of you that are not graduate students, you may want to listen anyway, because this actually would work with editors or publishers. And at some point in the future, I will do conversations with those folks as well. But really, I want to focus on 4 types of conversations you're going to have with your dissertation advisor that might be unpleasant. So these are not the types of conversations where you can say you've done everything the dissertation advisor wants you to do, and in fact you're ahead, or you found this really great breakthrough. We're talking about the tough kinds of conversations that you don't want to have. And so for graduate students that are in this position, and this is kind of happening all over the globe. I hear this from clients in many different countries. This is definitely not just a US institution type problem. But in general, these conversations boil down to 4 things. One conversation that's extremely tough is if you want to change your dissertation chair for some reason, or your dissertation advisor for some reason. For that conversation, we will not cover it in this episode, but I wanted to start with that because that is always one that comes up. Instead, what I would encourage anybody who's listening to this podcast episode to do, we offer free 30-minute writing consultations. Please use one of those to talk that over with one of us. Our services are confidential because everybody's situation with their dissertation advisor or chair is so nuanced. I don't want to give any blanket advice about that on a podcast. If you go to defendandpublish.com and scroll down a little bit, there'll be a button to sign up for a free consultation. So please use that if you're thinking about changing advisors, because sometimes there's a reason not to do it, and sometimes there's very good reasons to do it, and there's a delicate way that you can handle that. But let's talk about the other 3. So the most common one that I'm hearing from clients right now is that they didn't get the work done. Let's just sum it up as that. So let's say they promised their dissertation advisor that they were going to have a chapter ready, and then they don't have it ready by the deadline. Or they were supposed to do some other part of the project, apply for IRB, or analyze some data, or do something that might be non-writing related, but they didn't do it. So at that point, there's a couple of options with dissertation advisors. And one of the things I always ask clients is to find out what type of dissertation advisor or chair you have. Some of them are so buried in their own work, they don't even notice that you don't have your work done. And there you've probably caught on to that. And if you have a wiggle room of a couple of extra days, because they won't get to you. Certainly those kinds of advisors, they're challenging in other ways, but on this particular issue, the situation might not be as bad as you think. But one of the things that comes up in client work when we're talking about this issue is that it's not just that you told the dissertation advisor you didn't have work for them this time, it's that it happens over and over again. And so this is, whether it's the first time or the 10th time that this has happened, this conversation needs to take a couple of different approaches based on what type of advisor you have. From the advisor side, the number one piece of advice I've been giving clients is come clean, but come clean with a plan. So let's say you just didn't do the chapter, and let's say it's the first time that you didn't have it done. We'll start with the first time. If it's very first time you've ever been late, or very first time you're interacting with this dissertation advisor, what I would do is tell them, say, I just need an extra 3 days on this. I've come up with XYZ insight. I need a few extra time, or a little extra time just to work it in. And not really say, would that be okay with you or anything like that. I always have dissertation clients say, well, should I ask? Is that okay? Assume it's okay. That, it's not that the dissertation does not have any power over your situation. Of course they do. But if this is the first time you've ever been late, I think you can safely assume it's probably all right to be a couple of days late. Not for everything, but usually for just, a run of the mill turn in for a chapter. But let's say it's like the 5th time or the 10th time that once again, you're late. And I have several clients that are in this position at the moment where they repeatedly promise their dissertation advisor something and then they let their advisor down. So what can you do in this position? One of the things that I told one of my clients is, when considering the type of advisor that she has, her advisor is the type of advisor that's very disappointed. Then there is a whole layer of guilt in the relationship between the doctoral student and the advisor, because the doctoral student feels, guilty that she let her advisor down, and the advisor feels very disappointed and kind of lays a little bit of a guilt trip on the client, which just keeps the cycle going. So, if you have one of those types of advisors, I mentioned coming clean with a plan. A lot of times you can use a conversation with your advisor to reset the conversation. And so if you're in that position where it's the 10th time that it's happened, it's time for a meeting with your advisor, either on Zoom or face-to-face if your university is doing that. But what I tell clients to do is take a long look at their project, figure out what it is that has to be done or what isn't working. And that's what they're going to have the meeting with the advisor about. And let me give you an example. So one of the things that I tell clients to do is to say, I did not make our deadline. I realize I have done this before. And then say, I have figured out why I'm having trouble meeting the deadline. And here it is. And then lay out whatever it is that you are struggling with. Let's talk about on the academic side first, and then certainly personal issues could be another one. But one thing that might be is that you genuinely don't know how to do something. Or it could be you're just paralyzed by a decision you have to make about 2 different approaches. What you might do is say something like, these are 2 approaches that I'm considering to tackle this aspect of my introduction. I really cannot decide between the 2 of these. Would you have any feedback on which one might be more appropriate? And once I have that, I will finish it and get it to you by XYZ date, within 2 weeks, 48 hours, whatever it is. At least that shows your dissertation advisor that you've thought about it. Another thing that you can do is turn in a plan to your dissertation advisor and say, I realize I have not been great about meeting deadlines when I've talked with you, and I realize that this then puts a crimp into your workload because my work is late. So here's what I've done to reorganize my project and the way that I'm going to approach it. Not every dissertation advisor wants to hear about a writing schedule, but from the ones that I've talked with that come to us because they're worried about some of the students in their program, a lot of them do, because one of the things that they're concerned about is that the graduate student does not have the discipline to sit down and work and do writing. And so by providing at least some sort of a schedule, not, I'm going to write from 9 to 12 every day and then have lunch at noon, not that kind of schedule, meaning like, I'm going to tackle these parts of the chapter on these days. I'll be able to get it to you within 2 weeks. They want to hear specifics about what you're working on, when you're going to get it to them. Also, they like to hear, how are you going to work through the different parts of the project in a way that you can build your chapters and get them the chapters as complete pieces. And this is another way to kind of have that conversation with your advisor. Some advisors, when we're thinking about what type you might have, some are very willing to look at a chapter that is not complete. They're willing to look at a couple of different pieces and think about how that chapter might go together. Others don't even want to talk to you until you have a complete chapter. So this is another part where you need to figure out what type of advisor you have. So if you're starting to listen to this and you're just starting a PhD program, this is one thing to consider at the very beginning, is to ask these sorts of questions like, how often do you want to see a chapter from me? Is it okay if I would send you a section of a chapter to get feedback before I continue the chapter and finish out the argument that I'm making, just to make sure I'm moving in the right direction? You can find out some of those things. Other things that you can do with your advisor in that scenario where you haven't done the work, take ownership and own it. I've been procrastinating. I've been under a lot of stress as I've applied for jobs on the market at the same time as I'm writing this dissertation, and I realized I've not managed my time well. Here is what I'm going to do to get you the work that you need so we can work together productively. That's another way that you can do it. Sometimes you can also say, I've already started addressing these problems. Here's what I'm doing, and you can work towards solutions. And many of these conversations can happen over email, because sometimes the dissertation advisor just wants to hear from you. They just want to know you're alive and you're working on stuff. They don't necessarily need to have a Zoom or a face-to-face with you. However, I would say if you've already done this 5 times or more, it's time for a face-to-face conversation, even if it's on Zoom, or, of course, in the office if you're doing that. And, just really let the advisor know what you're struggling with and see if you can get some advice. Some advisors are much more, what I would say, touchy-feely than others, where they're very, sympathetic, and they want to know all about your life issues. Others, they don't care. They just want the academic work from you, and that's what they want to hear about. They don't want to hear that you're taking care of a spouse with a chronic disability, or that you've been homeschooling children for 6 months. They don't care. And that sounds harsh, but it's better to know that's what it is, that they're, where they're coming from when they talk to you, and then you can give them back what they want. So if you need help trying to frame one of these conversations with the advisors, again, you can use one of our free 30-minute consultations, or come back to us if you need to buy just an hour of writing coaching with us. We do a lot of that, where they say, please help me plan out how to deal with this advisor situation. We have many clients that buy 1 hour from us just to do that, and then we never see them again, and then they go on their merry way, which is great, right? We're trying to help you to work without us at some point, right? That's the point of going to writing coaching many times, is to get that support you need so you can work independently. So, if you're somebody in that position, it's definitely worth it to at least get some of the stress off of you, to make sure you have a plan for that conversation, and perhaps even some documents and things, ready to show your advisor that you've kind of turned over a new leaf and you're going to start working. I think a tougher one, though, and maybe the last one that we'll talk about at this point, is what do you do when you're writing, but you're not doing what your dissertation advisor or your thesis chair wants? This one is tougher. Probably it's even tougher to some extent than the conversation about you not holding up your end of the bargain and doing your work. And really, this can happen for 2 ways. One could be you don't want to do what your thesis advisor is, or your dissertation advisor is asking, because you think they're wrong. I have a fair number of clients who are really in a little bit of a bind because they want to work on their research in a certain way, and they feel in their heart, in the core of their being, that their dissertation chair is wrong, and the advice that they are given is not the advice they want to take. And at that point, there are a couple of options there. Certainly, switching advisors in some cases can be a solution to that. In other cases, some clients of ours will just say, I just want to get my dissertation done. I don't care. I'll do whatever they want, and I'm going to do it, get out, and then publish the work I want to do, which might be the most pragmatic angle. But sometimes you want to have a conversation with your advisor about why you're not pursuing that angle. And there, one of the things that we offer at Defend and Publish as advice is that, to maybe think about a way that you can do some of what your advisor wants without giving up all of your core ideas or your principles. There might be a way to do both things to some extent. Maybe, you don't work as strongly as you would like on the thing you feel is most important, but then the dissertation chair doesn't get everything that they want either. So this is, again, a conversation you can have with the advisor and say, here's why I feel like I want to do ABC in my dissertation. I know you want me to do XYZ. Could we talk about, is there a compromise between these two positions? Especially if you lay out why you're thinking about your research in the way you are, you could illustrate to your advisor why you're thinking that way in a way that maybe convinces him or her. You might talk to your dissertation advisor in a way and find out that the dissertation advisor does not think that's a good direction. And, in some cases, dissertation advisors are right. They have often more experience than you do, and they might know why that's not a good angle to take. It could be that the methodology you want is not appropriate for this, this type of subject matter, or it could be that there's so much research out on XYZ already, and you're exploring it from a tired angle that other people have done it in that way too. So, there is an opportunity to talk with your advisor about that. But I think one of the things that you can do is do a little bit of framing. Always with a dissertation advisor, you could frame it and say something like, help me understand your comments that I need to do XYZ. I think I need to do ABC, and XYZ seems opposite of that. And I'm just trying to see how we can maybe meet in the middle on that. What is a way that maybe I could recognize some of your concerns, but also pursue my research in this direction? So often dissertation advisors are happy you're just thinking about these issues. And so that's another way that you could approach that conversation. Another one though that I think is that you might have another tough conversation. This goes along the line, this sort of third vein of a conversation where you didn't do what they wanted. Sometimes they'll give you feedback, your dissertation advisor will give you feedback on your writing, and you didn't do what they wanted. And this can happen for a couple of reasons. It could mean that when they made comments on your draft, you didn't understand the comments. It could mean they made comments and you understood them, but you didn't carry out what it was they wanted you to do in the way they wanted you to do it. So, this is again time for a conversation with your advisor to clarify. And so one of the things that I will tell all dissertation clients when they get some comments back from their advisors on drafts is to do everything they can that they're fairly sure they can do. It's something that is correct, that they understand what it is. It could be they need to change, they need to add in a particular source, or they need to organize their draft in a different way or something like that. But if there's, kind of a lengthy comment about a theoretical approach or something like that, and they want you to add a lot of new content and you don't really know the best way to do that, take a stab at doing that. But that might be another time for a conversation with the advisor, because then you can say, I've completed all of these comments except for these two. And these two, here's what I'm thinking of doing to address them. I just want to check if that's what you had in mind. Having that clarifying conversation is often very helpful for both you and the dissertation advisor, because I've had this happen a number of times when I've worked with advisors and clients at the same time. Sometimes the advisor will say, well, I didn't say that the way that I should have said that to you. I wasn't clear. And then you'll find out what they actually mean. So I'm hoping that this information is helpful for those of you that need to have a tough conversation with your dissertation advisor. And as we start out the new year in 2022, this episode will come out at the beginning of January of 2022. One of the things that I think will be really helpful is to think about how you might have one of these conversations to start off the next semester. So many of us are starting a new academic term. It's time to have that conversation before you get into February and old habits come back and you get in the same rut of not completing the work for your dissertation advisor. One of the things that I have found at that point in the year with academics is that a lot of people are trying to make a fresh start. And it's very possible that your advisor is more than willing to kind of give you a clean slate and start over again. So see if that is possible. And of course, there's all kinds of other tough conversations you could be having with your dissertation advisors about personal things, about not being able to complete or graduate on time. Those are other conversations. We'll tackle them in another episode, or again, come back to us for a 30-minute consultation if you want to talk about your issues specifically. And that button will be linked to in the show notes today. So you can also find us at Defend and Publish and scroll down and click the consultation button to be able to do that. All right, I hope this helps. Happy writing, everybody.